Hello and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm sharing with you an altered wood circle that I created inspired by this month's Art Daily. This month's Art Daily is full of rust and gorgeous layers. You should hop over and check it out. As you can see, I started with a 7-inch wood circle and I covered it with a coat of black gesso. Now this is kind of where I probably should have done things a little bit differently, but this is how I started and it did work out. I painted all these bits with black gesso, but there was no reason for you to watch that, so let's skip ahead. I started adding a little bit of texture to my background using some graphite paste because at this point in time, I was thinking that the background was going to be darker, so I chose graphite paste. Through a stencil, I just covered the circle, not worrying about the middle too much because that's where the most of my embellishments were going to be. I'm going to get this little corner here. After that was dried, I went ahead and started adding my embellishments. So I'm sorry that I'm adding black embellishments on a black background. I really wasn't thinking that through very well. After I'm happy with my cluster, which consists of some redesigned resin pieces, some Finnabair pieces, and mostly chipboard from Hobbylicious, I'm going to go ahead and start dry brushing on some metallic paint. I'm using 2 layers of paint and I'm just randomly moving them around, focusing mainly on the silver spoon, and the other one is steampunk copper. So at this point in time, I still have a different project in my head from what I actually end up with. So I'm seeing all this color and I'm like, oh, this is bright, it's pretty, and I'm starting to be a little bit happier with it, but I definitely take a different path and I'm not really sure. I guess I have the Art Daily mood board more stuck in my head than I thought, and you'll see why in just a few minutes. But I'm just continuing to dry brush all around, picking up all the embellishments that I laid down. So you really couldn't see them because it was the black on black, and now with the pop of color you can see them. I'm adding just a little bit of water to the edge just to make it a little bit more fluid and to bring out my color just a tiny bit. Once this is dry, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next step. Which is adding a bunch of rust paste. Now, this is where this project takes a drastic turn because I used a very wide bristle brush for this and I was very heavy-handed and I was enjoying the texture, so I went a different way with this project. So you're going to see I go very heavy with the brown rust paste and I cover almost everything that I've almost done. So I'm going to continue to layer this brown on, and as you can see I go crazy with it. But in the end it all works out. So bear with me as I cover up nearly everything I've done with brown rust paste. Now I did have a little bit of water get underneath that piece of that gear, so that's why I had to re-adhere that afterwards. Now I've decided that I want to change the actual background. Now remember that I painted that black and then I added the paint and then I had a little bit of the metallic paint, and I decided I don't like that. So I want to bring in some blue from the mood board. So I'm adding a little bit of white acrylic paint with just a touch of some impasto in it because I didn't have the right color impasto. Now I'm adding some red rust on top of the brown rust, and I do a layer of dry red rust, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of rust after this with a touch of water. But I wanted to dry the layers in between because I wanted to make sure that I get a really grungy, gritty texture. So now I'm going to go ahead and add the water just to get a little bit of movement so it's a little more natural, a little bit more flowy. You can see I'm just moving around, continuing to work that rust in. And in this point in time, I'm losing a little bit of the blue that I put in, and you'll see me put that back in there later. Kind of really worked backwards on this, but you know, sometimes that is just the way that it goes. Now I really want to make the red pop in this, so instead of moving on to the yellow rust paste, that would be the third step in this process normally for me, I'm going to go ahead and just add the Carmine liquid acrylic and lots of water. And that's just really making this really red. So I'm going to move that around, and then I'm going to add some burnt sienna in just to add a little bit of depth. And this almost completely washes away all my blues. So then you'll see me go ahead and bring that back. Once I'm happy with everything, I'm going to give it a quick dry and move on to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and paint my butterfly with Stormy Ocean, and then I'm going to add some graphite wax. And I'm not being too heavy-handed with this, just lightly trying to get the edges and mainly focus on the antenna and the body. Now I'm going to continue to add some more to my cluster, a couple Mitforms, some metal pieces, and my main focal point. Like I said before, I washed away most of my blue underneath all that rust, so I'm going to sneak some in here and there, and you'll see now that it's in there. I'm adding just touches of rust on top of the mechanical goodies that I've added, and that's why you'll see me just lightly adding a little bit here and there so they don't look brand new on top of all this rust. A touch of liquid acrylic to make the mechanicals a little bit more red. And then I'm going to dry that and move on to my next step, which is lots of white gold wax. And it doesn't look as bright as it is actually in person on camera for some reason, but I did add quite a bit of white wax on here. And you can see right now my heart is red, and I do go back in and change that because I sat and I looked at this, and this wasn't exactly the project I had in mind when I started this, and then the more I looked at it, I wasn't happy with it, so I wanted to add some things. So I added that quote at the bottom and this little light bulb, and I made it blue because I really wanted to bring back in the blue. But once I added it, I realized that it kind of was like really the only blue thing there. So I'm going to add some beads, and I just painted them with the same liquid acrylic and made them blue on some rusty wire. And then I'm going to go ahead and I will change the heart to blue as well, because now I just feel like it needs to be blue too. So once that's done, that's really it, and my project is finally done. It's not 100% dry yet in this picture, but you get the idea. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you'll consider giving this video a thumbs up and possibly subscribing. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.